And for everyone out there who orders within the next 30 minutes, in addition, you'll get nothing absolutely free. Series 93, 126, items 1 through 80. To nonpartisan awareness, allegories are like salt to a meal that you may or may not have already had. One of our recent items noted that if you're trying to sell people some or own some useless shit, it helps a lot to sound real sincere. It helps. Well, further note that this applies to how life makes the thoughts it puts in you speak to you. Clever, huh? A meal you may or may not have already had. For his 20th birthday, since the boy seemed determined to pursue some extraordinary personal adventure and quest, his father gave him this advice. If you find a man who can talk without giving you his goddamned autobiography, stick with him. If you're not trying to be more conscious for yourself, then you're shilling for someone else. Okay, it goes something like this. From a standard view, no talk, no progress. From a non-standard one, talk, no progress. Receive absolutely nothing free. How life seems to go if you live in the trenches. One man said, "My teeth hurt." And life said, "You don't have any teeth." The man said, "They still hurt." How things go indeed, too close to the gum line. Oh. Once upon a time there was a man who thought, being ordinary is going to kill me. Yeah, I know. It hadn't done it yet, but I still know it's going to. Make note that in the myths and science of all three-dimensional worlds, in the final drama, one of the prevailing forces will go down in defeat. But further remember that it will not actually be the final act. Theater goers, good news. The tickets man holds are good forever. Notes on the social graces and otherwise. A man with a mind is never alone. A man with a mind is never as conscious as he could be. Note, all such notes as these are presented as conditional entertainment for adults only and should not be thought about by large physiqued children, those with supracervical tumors, or anyone with plans to run for public office. The only thing I could think of was an old Henny Youngman joke like, is this an audience or an oil painting? And I'm not going to take other people's material, see? I assume everybody's ears are full of stuffing, right? Can you stop where you're going long enough for a poem? Then open up your head and therein take a peek. Beggars never rest, bums never sleep. Take a peek in your head. Is it something about post-holiday that you have to explain everything? After studying the methods people ordinarily use in the attempt to bring their minds in line, one man thought, I don't need no help to get out of step, much less, dear friends, to stay there. Well, it's about time for it to be defined. Collective intelligence. The dumbing of everyone. The only consciousness worth talking about is maxed out consciousness. Official recent research reveals that one of the outstanding benefits of getting old is in the increased tolerance there is for a man to talk about himself. If a man's speech generator, his mind, does not continue to expand as he continues to age, then he will ultimately have nothing else to talk about but himself. For such will be as far as both his needs and interests extend. For a more perceptive person, humility is no particular virtue, while a certain verbal reserve is a downright requisite. Footnote, postscript, sidebar, and addendum, all off to the side. For the few, getting old might not have to be the flamboyant verboten that it is, if everybody else and their brothers-in-law didn't do it also. Life has asked me to pass along its one and only public service announcement, which is, live. And into our medical department comes this question concerning jogging. Dear sports doctor, just because my mind is always running, does that mean that I always have to trail along? And the doctor replied, well, it certainly won't hurt you to try not to. If indeed you do not make such efforts, you'll never recognize the low-impact damage to your potential for an increase in consciousness affected by everyday monotonous repetition. Left, right. What passes for thought normally passes so quickly that men have no time to question its validity. What passes for thought normally passes so quickly that men have not the opportunity to compare it with any other possibilities. Even though that last item may have offered real useful advice for a few, for the sake of our wider viewing audience, I feel it my duty to add a more general note to the same psychomedical area regarding certain benefits of being part of the overall normal majority. To wit, if you stick close enough to your standard issue mind, then you'll never run the risk of seeing it for what it does. Is. During late October, a certain father who believed his son capable of digesting such served him up this verbal bill of fare regarding how an excited, more alert man might approach the matter of trying to bring his mind and its endless automatic thoughts under some type of new control. He spoke to the boy in these terms, quoting now, always deceive and defraud your friends. Clever opponents will be too smart for it. And another viewer sends in this message. While channel skipping, I discovered your program, and now do periodically sit and watch it. And my spasmodic pleasure in doing so, I now describe to myself thusly, that your talk and ideas are like a vibrator for the mind. Sincerely, yours here on the couch, etc. Do we detect a increase in distaff laughter? One guy had a plan, but it wasn't worth a damn. So he became an institution and peddled it to others. After a good meal, a dog will lie down in the sun. A frog will nestle down in the mud. But where does your mind go after it has been stuffed? To the head of the class. To the frigging head of the meaningless class. Now just relax and let your collective fellow students hoist you on their shoulders and toss you in the air. Byplay between a guy and some of his fellow guys. Guy says, why be dumber than you have to be? To which his fellow guys replies, why not? Tip for dictionary divers. If you can't find a word for it, there is no word for it. And if you can't find a word for it and you know what you're doing, leave it alone. Motto of a more conscious college swim team. The human mind is a terrible pool to jump in, wearing everyone else's clothes. And you do realize that's exactly what you're doing when you think again whatever it is that the collective has already thought. And then there was this other man who, for his family's anniversary, shot first himself, then killed everyone else that proved to be his perfunctory intellectual progeny. A caring parent, if there ever was one. 7 years, a short story. After only 7 years, this one man learned how to program his VCR. Spurred on by this overwhelming success in one area, he has made tentative plans to next take on his mind. A viewer scribbles to say, 7 years is not the same as 8. So, true viewer, but neither is attempting something the same as doing the damn thing. Okay, another run at it. Definition, collective intelligence. The recollection of things never known. And now another feature from our You Can Bet Your Ass on It corner. Those who attempt to engage in any form of non-material, non-physical charity are themselves bankrupt and devoid of any resources. Number 31 from Mr. Universe's Quiver of Maxims. You can only give away that which you do not have. Suggestion: you might be cautious if life ever offers to help you out, inasmuch as it has but one exit on the 3D level. You know the one. It's where friends bring flowers and they have your name carved in stone. A sizable chunk of the everyday human drama is played out in the brief theater of one man's mind. Standing a bit stage right, he ruminated, if I were someone else, would I dislike me as much as I do now? The king, after looking over the activities of his kingdom, from the strictly commercial to those of a public service nature, mused, why is the crown the last institution to have a slogan? Later that afternoon, the royal priest, who also served as the ruler's part-time personal advisor, responded, it is because men who require tacky, catchy, cliched taglines to help establish their identity and purpose of life are the kind of men who suck dicks. And your grace doesn't suck dicks. Even later that evening, a young village lad heard of this entire episode and reflected unto his own selfeth thusly. But if the priest is correct in his assessment that the neural head of any empire does not need the assistance of a personal motto or other bourgeois sign of recognition, then how do you explain the wide adoption of nicknames? Does anyone listening to all of this grasp the connection of all of this? Its significance. And how the young man both put his finger on something while simultaneously striking it smartly with a self-made hammer. No matter his race, religion, or nationality, a real man's only loyalty is to his own head. One day, one kid suddenly wondered, what the hell are adults staring at? The mind, a watch wound up so tight that it can make the pocket it's in run. In the normal course of aging, all buses begin to slow down as they approach the final station. But that is no proof that you've actually been somewhere. One man's mind one day said to him, hey, don't try and insult me. And the man said, fuck you. To which his mind replied, hey, don't try and make up. Local reality told one man, don't try and suck up to me. And the man replied, I told you before to get screwed and not pull that crap on me. And reality said, I know. And after that I offered to buy you a drink, but you never showed up. One day, one man knelt down reverently beside his all-digital stereo rack system and softly intoned, dear life, I can't even begin to tell you just how much I appreciate, and his woofer suddenly interrupted and said, don't even try. To certain space junkies, nothing is quite so real as pain, nor as useful. You can live in a blister, you can live in a cut, but don't ever live where you can't shut up. The proper conscious use of so-called suffering must always be silent and unidentified. Help for the helpless, feck for the feckless. If you don't think about something long enough, you may not ever think about it again. Medical recount. Those who don't know how to help often begin their treatments by saying, now this is going to hurt at first. Aesop on the table. A snake asked a man, how do you expect to ever hold something as slippery as the mind? Institutions. Hacks hired by life to tell you that it wants everybody to be square and middle class. charities, institutions that believe that you should pay for the privilege, and may whine if you don't. When it would come time to feed his mental hogs, this one man would throw himself out into the pen and leave the slop in the house. Being civilized, the act of pretending that you're civilized. A viewer is driven to ponder, is being civilized thusly the same as being institutionalized? Some marching tips are how to get there more efficiently. A man with 2 left feet doesn't care when you step off or what the tempo is. Neither does a man with 2 right feet. Or with 2 both the same. Or with neither one the same. Do you see what I'm getting at? This thing, a poem of sorts. Once you've doed it, there's no mystery to it. The only question then is, when can I do it again? This thing, end of poem, sort of. Some bad news that some of you can probably use. If you do finally realize that the only possible valid criticism of man is that he is dumber than he has to be, and that upsets you, then you become temporarily even dumber than the dumb. How, in the middle of the week of some people's lives, the mind feels that things may work. On days when it rains, noon never comes. Did that help? A definition for the weekend, however. Melancholy, a condiment life has provided along with the normal hormonal experience. Hint to the pudding-headed. You don't have to take a helping of everything just because it's out on the serving line. Response to my hint. You don't? Are you sure? Reply to my response. Well, sure, you're supposed to, okay? In fact, you have to. But so what? Are you going to let that stop you from not doing it? What kind of pretender to being a real person are you anyway? This communique from a viewer. Regarding something you said recently about how we shouldn't be concerned over our social standing or reputation, since on this bus everybody's a 2-bit whore, well, I figured out why this is. It's because we're on a 2-bit whore bus. That's why. I do believe that we have another person who has finally come down decidedly on one side of the question that asks, from which is man driven, his heredity or his environment? One guy flexed himself and said, I don't take no shit off nobody. And his mind said, how about me? And he said, except you. Tip to authors. If you don't have anything important to say, have really nice typing paper. Some academic and professional news. Today, people become psychologists instead of priests for 3 reasons. 1, it seems more up to date. 2, you don't have to dress up funny. And 3, it pays better. Although there may be others, you'd have to be crazy or at least fanatical to worry about them. The true sign of a sane man is that when it's enough, it's enough. And enough is always sufficient. The only thing sane about an ordinary man is his mind. And if you really believe that that constitutes sanity, then you're crazier than he is. Okay, you see, here's the deal. To a person, to this stuff born, there is no such animal, animal noise, or book about animals that is ever enough. For if it ever is, then it is no more than the everyday mind again, and nothing to help a man learn to roar for himself. how one can be neurally limited, yet hormonally gifted. One man says that he is so dumb that if he wants to count above 10, he has to put his hands in his pockets. And then, claims he can go as high as 13 or 14. And now, a modern maxim for the marginally conscious. Life giveth, and life taketh away. But in your case, it's mostly a matter of taking away. Closing theme. Boo, hoo, hoo. The real closing theme. Boo, hoo, hoo, your mama. Truism from another time warp. Time wrap. Serious people are happy people. Silly people always wonder. A summation of all regret, remorse, vexation, and self-reproach, and for some, what should be their summary execution. A real person has but one regret, that they're not more conscious. Ordinary people perceive of the only potential resolutions of their mistakes as being in the past, where they were committed. And while this sounds to be the only logical possibility, it is in fact quite illogical and impossible. Yet note that life normally provides no workable alternative. Mr. Science's field goal theorem, number 28. The past can be affected, but only by those who are not stuck in the present. A child's garden of worse, as in it could be worse. Daddy, if you play with words long enough, will they finally come out to play with you? A viewer writes, I kind of got tickled at one of your recent items that was entitled, How to Be Perfect, which said, first make a list of all the things it take to make you perfect, then do them. I really did enjoy that one, but what I want to know is, would that work? Sincerely, etc. Well, sir, try it. One man began directing sarcastic comments to his inanimate possessions when they did not operate to suit him. Such as, when the vacuum cleaner didn't pick up every little piece of lint, he'd say, hey, be sure and don't strain yourself. Or when his car didn't start the first try in the morning, he'd tell it, oh, that's okay, go ahead, sleep a while longer. Once he discovered how well this worked, he began to use the same approach on his family. How you can scientifically spot a more conscious man. He's the one who ain't on nobody's case. And a member of our audience inquires, based on what I learned in school and on my own thoughts in the matter, it seems to me that a person is either conscious or they're not. So I'm at a loss to understand what you mean when you speak of people being conscious or being more conscious. It doesn't seem possible, therefore useful. Could you enlighten me in this regard, yours, etc.? A fair question, and although the two areas of consciousness and learning are not the same, they are similar enough for a pragmatic comparison and response thusly. Ask yourself, viewer, why do ordinary people pursue continuing education? And I saw his face momentarily brighten. A kid pondered, if real men don't have to say that they're men, and real women don't have to prove their femininity, then why do people have diplomas and talk about how smart they are? An approximate history, and then some. Man spent his first 5,000 years trying to explain himself religiously. He now attempts to do so psychologically. And where is it all headed? Where will it all successfully conclude? Well, would you consider a certain kind of future one sans explanations? You would? Ellipsis. After many years of being human, one man thought to himself, what gives here? I think more about people I dislike than about those I do like. The big difference between at least knowing about this kind of stuff and routine existence. If, first thing in the morning when you wake up, there you are, then there you are. And that's about it. Why an increase in consciousness is the only answer. Well, there's one planet that looking up someone's nose is considered to be, well, I'm not going to tell you. Why an increase in consciousness? No, you shouldn't be in that. Why an increase in consciousness is the only answer. The mind can no more grow thoughts than a man can fingers. As you might have imagined, for some time now, the mind lobby has wanted to write me and complain about certain of my comments, but cannot think of anything original to say. As you may have noted, irony has no lobby. It needs none. Everybody supports it. How the city works and how people forget how it works. Just because a man doesn't know what he's doing is no absolute proof that he can help you. Do not let urban mirages mislead you, no matter how real they are. Those of you keeping petunia scores might care to note that in this instance, I did not allow some viewer to write me and ask if I didn't mean to say no matter how real they seem. Now back to your gardening. Just as a bus would never get anywhere without the friction of the highway beneath its wheels, so too is a man's mind immobile without the traction provided by his criticisms. The above item is another chapter in the Bullshit Chronicles, conveniently condensed for common consumption. Fella spits and muses. If you can't stop the train, I guess you might as well enjoy the ride. Ethical and practical lessons from a brighter, lit classroom. There is nothing morally reprehensible about making a reputation by attacking others. It's just meaningless to a more conscious man. What has dung gained by criticizing dung flies, other than a reaffirmation of its dungness? Merely the other side of the pig pen from hero worship. Repetitive update. If you ain't one of a kind, you ain't none of a kind. And this permits not only the specious illusion of having even peers, which no real thinker does. You are one unto yourself, or you're no one at all. As he headed off toward the man-made lights, one boy received this parting advice from his father. In the city, if they're going to entertain you, make them look you first dead in the eye and say, "We're going to entertain you." That way you're always safe, even if not entertained. After attending his first religious service, a man mused, "I hear the theory, but I don't smell a cake baking." The human mind will let you do almost anything with it except control it. And if you are asked, is that supposed to be a hint of some kind? Note, the human mind running at routine speed and intensity wouldn't recognize a good hint if it stepped on one barefooted. In fancy script, the family coat of arms of this one clan carried these words: "Fuck a hint, shoot us dead between the eyes." Where is such a family when you need one? Time again for the definitions tango. Trying to be more conscious. Something to do with your mind until you become more conscious. One guy said to another guy, "Tell me, what do you think of me?" Another guy replied, "Seeing how I don't even talk about myself, I sure don't have any interest in discussing you." And the first guy said, "Say, is our conversation anything at all like what goes on in your mind concerning your own routine thinking?" Based on the fantastic response we received regarding a similar item earlier, we are proud now to present a new feature, how to be a better person. First, get everyone you know to tell you the things they think you could do to make you a better person, and then do them. And the viewer gushes, "God, but things are simple when a simple person tells you how to do them." Thanks, I think. It's fun being human and mentally normal when you know some of the secret tricks and tips. That was the title. It's easier to be irritated on an empty stomach or after a full meal. Life told one group of people, everyone can dig it, whose name begins either with a T or sucker punch. All aboard, hormones at gate 2, neurons on track 3. If you can't see, hold your hands out in front of you. If you don't hold your hands out in front of you, learn how to see. A certain man noted to one of his friends, "Another interesting, impossible aspect of this sort of activity is that you can damn near affect others genetically who are not part of your own family lineage." Then there was another chap who recently stated, "I don't care if I never see another modifier as long as I live." Sampler, trees, modifiers for forest. Some neuroresidential news. Lacking the use of modifiers, a man can never become homesick. Expanded consciousness has no morality. Expanded consciousness is morality. A father told his son, being nice to someone doesn't have to mean that you like them. And the boy asked, "Didn't mother tell sis the same thing?" And the old man replied, "Well, yes, but it was in another context." But I must note to all of you that to a more alert person of any kind, there is no such useful distinction as another context. Life is the sole category and context, and within it exist all hormones, all neurons, all bodies, all minds, all perceptions, and all realities, with these subsections affording specious differentia for the prosaic intellect. I was going to say that, I believe I'll write in and say that I almost got that one. Kind of pretentious. But hey, it's free. How? Title. Does it confuse them? Should I always announce when there's a title, since they all have titles, some of them longer than the... I'm trying to do it with my voice, but being untrained. How? Right before your unseeing eyes, local reality can, in times of cold, rub its hands together and stay warm. See, that's the title. A wet dog is a happy dog if he has a master enamored of dryness. And the viewer writes, "Believe it or not, but I almost get that one. And yet I still must ask, why should this be?" Dear viewer, if you're getting that good, better yet ask yourself, why not? And even if not instantly, there you are, then at least there you are on the way to there you are. Human conversation between two humans. Why hate your own mind? Who's better? Second version. Why work on just your own mind? Who's better? Senior edition. Why is it, you think, that everyone has only their own mind? Even before his latest blasphemous work had actually been published, one man had already put a price on his own head. The muse of tap and leap speaks to man. If you can dance faster, dance faster! More Insider's myth notes. The gods of speech and rhetoric created alliteration so that men and certain words wouldn't feel so lonely. Some neural juice news. If you think enough, you won't have time to worry about not being able to be more conscious. But wait, Kate, a Hollywood update. The mind is a movie. Stop film. The early morning ritual in one household. Okay, son, answer me this. What will make you sicker than poison? That's easy, Dad. Taking what other people say as though they are serious. Historical supplement. Several of man's best-known religions, political systems, economic theories, even whole civilizations came about because of certain people's inability to recognize a joke when they heard one. Same with the formation of most people's personalities. And yet, another description of new consciousness or expanded consciousness or some such differentiating name. Okay. New consciousness. Consciousness without the baggage. Through its many and several institutions, life sent word to man, to one man, "Don't you make me mad." To which the man mentally responded, "Well, don't bother to threaten me when you've already done your worst. And damn if life wasn't momentarily taken aback." Note, those who do not immediately understand such items as this should not bother to write me for clarification. You either get it or you don't, which may be life's revenge on you personally. And by the way, as always, don't take any of this personally. In summary, one man said, "There are few things I hate as much as the things I hate." From somewhere comes this: public cleansing and confession. Anyone who attempts to define consciousness is an idiot. Thank you so very much. Thank you. I feel so much better. Efforts to expand one's perception of the world is not the same as an increase in consciousness. I know that it sounds like the same thing. I know that it sounds like the way to get there. I know that it seems like the two are closely related, but still, they aren't the same thing. Now, don't you feel better? Oh yeah, P.S. Those who like to say that the truth hurts have yet to ever try on reality. Boy, will they feel better then or what? Besides worse. Expressing what I feel certain is the heretofore unspoken sentiments of many others, one man said, "If it were not for my thoughts to distract me, my mind would drive me crazy." From a hard-nosed, point-blank view, no matter how you cut it, talk is always still just the agitation and not the achievement. If you do not, non-selectively and non-qualitatively, all thoughts see as flies, your mind will always be fly paper. Theological update from another theosphere. To a more conscious man, what is hell but mental monotony? And to save you some time, viewers, I'll ask it for you. What is the difference between mental monotony and simply having a mind? You're not really waiting on an answer, are you? I wonder what the hell we were talking about last time. What was it? Part of it was another aspect or another description of the continuing aspect of how life beautifully tricks man, since there is no other word for it, intellectually, mentally. Life does not trick anybody else. Life does not trick man, even apparently. Well, God, I'm going to have to tell the truth. I was going to say it doesn't trick man below the mental level. That is, just physically, if we talked about man in that kind of discrete manner, that it does not trick man physically. And yet, I was going somewhere else, but I'm going to point this out. And yet, see, this is another great example of the trickery itself. That once you get a mind, you do think that below that level, that life can trick you. If you didn't understand that, the one word description, if you can do it yourself, is hypochondria. But notice life does not trick anybody. Look at another creature. You do not see life, people, any sane person has never, ever in the history of man, has the same person ever looked around at and thought that life was treating animals unjustly. I mean, you've got to be insane to think, well, how unjust for a worm, for a poor helpless worm to become dinner. Do you see, look at that robin. Have you ever seen such a devilish looking, I never have liked robins. I mean, blue, obviously, I hate to tell you, I do not like blue animals. They got the wrong bird. Brown animals, blue jay. No, you understand, you have to be insane. That's just, you do not say life is tricking worms. It told worms, come on out of the ground. Come on, be a worm, come out in the sun, come on out. And then it lets, these evil, probably communists, if not Yankees, or they could be Muslims for all I know, birds, suddenly they wait there and they leap out. And everybody goes, God, you're right. Life sucks. You got to be nuts. But it's the same from here down. That if from here up you are part of the ordinary, that you are part of the ordinary walking around sane, then even from here down you never think that life treats you unjustly. Not where you shouldn't be. I know that there are part-time hobbies of being hypochondriacs. And you think like, that's just the easiest one, but it's like people going, it's some kind of dirty trick. Why aren't I more attractive? How come I can't get more women? How come I can't be more sexually attractive? It's a trick. All of that's just insane. I mean, it's just an ordinary pastime, but you understand, it has no workable, usable, operational validity. What the hell are you going to do with it? So it is a form, when I say insane, it is useless. There's nothing you can do with that. So life does not trick people. But from here up, men believe life tricks them. Now what I was talking about was if you recall, the fictitious planet I made up, that they had developed their micro technology to the point that you could have an automobile say, when you sat down in the street, did you fasten your seatbelt? And then that they discovered that it was better, more efficient. People responded in a more positive way to what apparently the collective had in mind. If instead of just a direct suggestion or command, fasten your safety belt, was it had 4 or 5 different questions that none of them seemed to be quite that direct, and went into feigning and dancing and hey, hi, welcome to the car again. Fasten your seatbelt. Oh, well, knowing you probably did. Anybody smart enough to buy a Fluttermobile, can afford it, I'm sure that you're also intelligent enough to know the benefits of, why am I wasting my time? Well, now, of course, we all forget things, so maybe you should check. And it found that worked better. I also was trying to point out to you that historically, you could look at the life of you individually from the nervous system, the expansion of it, to the absolute overall history of man, is going from early direct ones, as reflected in the myths and the creation stories of all religions and cultures, that at first just God said, hey, like tonight's public service message, I said life only had one, and I repeat it for it only has one. Live. That's it. No tricks, no nothing, no conditions like live a good life, live like a good boy, you be a good Adam, you be a good Eve, and you be a good Ken or Barbie. It's live. Belt. That'd been like the planet, you get down, you sit down in your car, instead of, you knew which belt. So you can make it, I'm just trying to make the two, we start off with an easy one, that God said, live. Are those of you of religious and cultural backgrounds more dependent upon guilt and regret? Instead of God said live, he went, go! You remember after your forefathers and mothers screwed up. But to have a parallel one, the car, instead of my long one about what would have obviously been probably the way it went, like, please fasten your seat belt. How about you just sit down and a voice goes, belt! And you know what it meant, man, fasten your belt. Same history of man now. It went from that they found from a simple, direct, in your face, one word, belt, live, go, think. That even though that got things going, even though that one thing, belt, would make you fasten your belt, or at least notice it, they found it worked better to get away from, to expand from this one word, belt, or live. Now, at first, which is why I put it down, and some of you did chuckle, or you liked it somewhere, that I said, by the way, I'm going to repeat, life asked me to give you, it's one and only public service announcement, the only one it's got. Live. And you would think, well, that's everything. What else do you need? Well, I don't know. We obviously needed something else, or life's all we did. You got your choice. Either life was mistaken or you don't understand it. I'll leave it up to you to which one decide which it is. You might take a hint, though. No, okay. At least for your own benefit, take a hint as to which one you pretend it is, that you believe it is. At any rate, it would seem at first that if life said, all right, here's my message to man. But see, life is in the same predicament I am. Its intro to what it's going to say is longer than what it has to say. Do you like that one? Life says, all right, folks, I created you, I'm in charge here, and I've got one simple message. I got only one message for you, and then after that, it's up to you. You know how many words is that already? The message is, live. That was a kind of a side one, but it has to do with the intellect again. In other words, if you just found yourself here suddenly, you and all of humanity, and you had knowledge of language, and have a clear blue sky, you've been here, who knows how long, we're all just staying around. Hundreds of minutes, thousands of hours, thousands of years, we're staying there, and suddenly a voice goes, live. Now, even if you know the word, there's not enough. You don't know where it came from. Everybody look at each other. You think, did I hear it correctly? So life to even tell you the one message, the only message it needed to live, it has to go, all right, listen, folks. Is everybody, if I got your attention, is everyone listening? This is life. Yeah, the life, it's me. Now, are you listening? All right, now look. Be quiet. Now listen. It won't take but a second. In fact, it didn't even tell you beforehand, or it already gets confused. It said, I only got one message and it's one word. Some of us would have, or some smart people back then, people with the interest of getting off the bus even before they realized, wait a minute, that fucker's about to put us on a bus and send us somewhere. Even they would have been already suspicious if he'd said, all right, listen up. It's just a one-word message, because you'd begin, some of the people would already begin to think, wait a minute, if it's a one-word message, how come you didn't spend 2 minutes with an intro? No, if you got a knack, do it. Life had to go from a one-word message of live, let's say, which is more positive than get out or leave, belt, live. And you would think, well, hey, that covers it. And I was trying to do it. Imagine that life spoke in a encouraging, good-willed, good-natured sounding voice, that suddenly life gives you its one message. Everybody, as soon as they're born, all of humanity and each individual, life says, live. And you can hear the warmth, the cheeriness, the wishing of good bon voyage to your life, good travel. You can hear it. It just goes, live. And you think, well, that's it. But it obviously wasn't it. They found it more efficient. They had to start doing things like live. It's a good Jew. Live. As you know, the Italian government wants you to. Live. But feel guilty about it. It had to go on and live. But remember, you're a woman, and somebody might take advantage of you. That one's too funny. Anyway. There was a guy standing out front that said his one fear in life now, I'm talking about this actually happened. It was modern times. At least I'm going to make them up. This one's contemporary. And he said his one fear in life was now that he keeps hearing about women being taken advantage of by men. And he said that he only has one fear in life, and it's no longer, of course, the communist threat or the atomic destruction. He's afraid he's going to meet such a woman. Well, he said he has an extreme uneasiness about being around stupidity, and he figures any at that level that he would probably have the terminal willies. Life had to go from one simple to expanded versions, and not just an expanded version. It didn't just go from live to, well, live as a good Roman Catholic. So it didn't do that. Now each person and each group of persons that have been collected up into some race, religion, nationality, and etc., they think they hear it as life says, live as good Roman Catholics. That's the way they hear it, but there's more going on. Life did not leave it there. Now they know that, but they don't know the way to look at it. Because if they were listening to this, Roman Catholics or any group, and I said, well, life didn't just do that to man. It said that. Now remember back to the voice simulator, not to be confused with your mind, which somebody the other night tried to say, well, our minds are like thought simulators. Oh, bad people. It was me that said that. Life did not just pick out one, such as the voice. Remember the car seat that said, belt. It didn't just go from that to discovering, to finding out that instead of one direct question or direction or suggestion, that going around it, 4 or 5 different ones worked better. All right? But none of them conflicted with the other. Remember the way I was making it up as I went along, that the voice says, welcome to your car this morning. I'm sure you fastened your safety belt, knowing you. Of course, some mornings I guess we all get busy and we might forget, so perhaps you better check. Oh, I don't mean to be insulting. You understand? None of it is directly in your face. It doesn't say you're too stupid. It no longer just says do it. It almost, some of the versions I just made up, and you can do your own. It says, well, I know you would, which is rhetorical, because if it knew you would, it wouldn't even bring it up, right? The little voice simulator the little chip, somebody would look and see that you put on your belt, and it'd skip it. So it's a rhetorical to say, well, as smart as you are to own such a fine car as this, to be able to afford it, then you've got to be intelligent enough, to put on your seat, to fasten your belt as soon as you get in the car. I don't have to tell you that. Well, that's a goddamn lie. Even for a voice simulator. You mean a thought simulator? No, I said that. No. I'm talking about voice simulators. Don't get confused. Okay. The point is, you understand the examples I'm making up and do your own. Do I have to back up this much? Does everybody know? Now that I think about it, they've been playing around with this great idea, the one that's even funnier than women being taken advantage of by men, is this thing that they keep threatening that they're about to invent, or they say they're already into it, artificial intelligence. They're even, I know, stumbling around like to try and do it. Aren't they calling it fuzzy logic? Or I know that they may not mean exactly what I mean, but I know this much about keeping up, that they've got to be somewhere in the same neighborhood by now, that to make machines in some way get past just the binary literal outcome that's going to come around from on and off, and from true digital information, in some way they got to, instead of going, if it's not the world of math, if it's not just a machine's got to put out 2 and 2 is 4, if they're going to start approaching anything like human intelligence, as they call it, you mean like a woman being taken advantage of? You're getting confused again, sir. Hush. That they, in some way, they've got to get less specific. They think, well, hey, that's going to get closer to human minds, which I don't guess they thought about what they said. Well, this is people with PhDs, I'm sure, if they're in a position to be playing around with these great pieces of computer hardware and think, well, we're going to get around to something that will approach human thought and won't be just a blind machine just turning out numbers. What should we do? Well, let's make it to where what it turns out is a little less vague and uncertain. That sounds like it. And then they all, well, let's take a break and go to lunch. Nobody thinks, wait a minute. Am I dealing with a thought simulator in my head? Am I on another planet? Am I mistaking my brain for a seatbelt? No. But notice, life, in my example, it didn't do just one. It didn't come up with one, and then it didn't come up with two. It didn't go from belt, fasten your belt. It didn't go from fasten your seatbelt to adding just one other, like, well, fasten it if you want to. Or even three, like, well, you don't have to fasten it if you don't want to live long. See, which all of those end up being, to some degree, mutually exclusive. That's how the human mind with ordinary people believes that life has spoken once it went past the one word of, like, live. It now says, live as a Muslim to some groups. That's what they hear. But then right across the river, right across the street, it says, live as Hindus. They take it as they're supposed to, but they take it as being absolutely mutually exclusive. They do not see that it's more efficient. As far as they're concerned, it is now a cause of great friction. This is where their brain hits the asphalt. That's where buses, remember that's the only way buses move, is the friction between the tires and the pavement. Certainly, same way as men's mind would be immobile. They would just be stationary, never get anywhere, were it not for the kind of traction provided by criticism in the brain of a Muslim being able to look across the alley to a Hindu and have some form of legitimate criticism. That's what gives the mind traction. But remember, that was listed as a new chapter in the continuing bullshit chronicles. They are not mutually exclusive, if you can see. That is why I continue to bring out things about being, if you could get past the mind, then what you would see would be more point blank, right in your face, just plain, which is not regression. It's just not going back to somewhere, but it's being able to see that going from the original simple point blank one word, to use that allegory, to go from that to not only one word but a long sentence, and not only one sentence but then 4 or 5 different sentences, and they are not mutually exclusive. Once you can get above that and see it, you are, so to speak, not back to the one word simplicity, but you see where it came from, and you see that it is still the point blank simplicity of live. But it's everyone else in the midst of listening to these different ones. Did you fasten your seatbelt? Oh, I'm sure you did. Are you still going to temple? What kind of Muslim are you? Listen, us Italians don't have to put up with that kind of shit from Greeks. Hey, us Greeks, we've had our own trouble. How about these Turks? You see what they're trying to pull again? And they hear that all is being mutually exclusive. Therefore, it is not simple. It is not direct. It is not in your face. And if you get above it, it is. It's still live. Or for you who are still more hungry for guilt, go! Nah, shouldn't leave on a sour note.